The oilseed oil was the color of old amber, and it pressed out of the crushed seed so readily that Pyo Eun-ha seemed almost suspicious of it. She stood at the workbench with the small clay dish balanced on her fingertips, tilting it one way and then the other, watching the oil crawl slowly back across the glazed surface. It moved the way honey moves in cold weather, reluctant, self-satisfied, indifferent to any urgency anyone else might feel. It presses out easily, she said, and the land grows the seed like a weed. We could raise fuel by the fieldful and never dig for a drop. She rubbed a thin smear between her thumb and forefinger, frowning at the drag of it. But it is thick, Do-jin, heavy and slow and sticky. I do not think a thing this lazy wants to explode. I think it wants to fry a fish. I looked at the dish. She was not wrong about the texture, but I had been watching the engine sit cold and hungry for too long to turn away from the first candidate that could be grown in quantity on frontier soil. A fuel we can grow forever is worth more than gold, I said. If the engine will drink it, only one way to find out. Pour it in. It did not drink it. It stewed it. Mukse found me an hour later, scraping black sludge from the intake passage with a narrow iron pick, his face carrying the particular expression of a man who has just watched a promising experiment fail in the most thorough way possible. The residue came off in thick gummy ribbons, the color of charred pine resin, coating the pick and his fingers and the rag he wiped them on. It didn't burn, it stewed, he said, holding the pick up so I could see the buildup. Coated everything in this tar. A few more minutes, and it'd have glued the rings solid and seized the whole engine. He brought the rag close to his nose and inhaled. The power's in it, I can smell it. It just won't let go of itself clean. It burns like wet wood. I took the pick from him and scraped a slow line through the deposit. Too heavy. The molecules were too large and too tangled to flash to vapor and combust all at once the way a working engine needed them to. They just sat in the heat and carbonized. We don't need a different plant, I said. We need to change it, thin it. That's not a farming problem anymore. That's a chemistry problem. Pyo. What followed was 41 attempts. I know the number because Pyo Eun-ha wrote each one down in her notebook with the methodical patience of someone who has decided that failure is simply data that hasn't finished arriving yet. She did not pray over the clay pots. She did not appeal to the mandate or to luck or to anything except the next variation. Wood ash lye in different concentrations, grain spirit in different ratios, different temperatures, different sequences, different waiting times. 40 times the result was a mess, cloudy, foul-smelling, useless, or all three. The 41st time, the mess separated into two messes. She came to find me in the machine room with her notebook open and a small glass flask in each hand, one cloudy and dense at the bottom, one clear and faintly golden at the top. 41 tries, Do-jin, she said. 40 of them made a mess. This one made two messes that politely separated, which is chemistry's way of saying yes. She held the flasks up to the lamp so the light passed through both layers. The wood lay and the spirit pulled the heaviness out. It sinks as this soapy sludge, and what floats free is lighter, eager. She set the flasks down carefully. I do not know the true name of what I have done. I know only that I have made the lazy oil into something that might want to explode after all. Also, the sludge appears to be excellent soap. The frontier will be both fueled and clean. I find that very tidy. I looked at the two flasks for a long moment. Transesterification. She had worked out transesterification from first principles in a frontier workshop in 41 tries with wood ash lye and grain spirit, and she had done it without knowing the name for it or the theory behind it, only the observation that one attempt had separated cleanly and all the others had not. You just made fuel and soap in the same pot, I said, and don't even know you reinvented something half my old world ran on. 41 tries, that's the whole method. You didn't pray for it. You tried it 41 times and wrote down which one separated. I picked up the flask with the clear layer. Let's burn the bright layer. It ran. Not a cough, not a stall, not the sluggish reluctance of the raw oil. It ran, clean and steady, the engine finding its rhythm and holding it the way a well-tuned instrument holds a note. Mokse stood back from the machine with both hands pressed flat against his thighs, grinning at it with the unguarded delight of someone who has just watched an impossible thing become ordinary. "It's running," he said, loud enough to be heard over the engine. "A real run, on oil from a weed and a pot of Pyo's soap water. We can farm this, teacher, grow our own fire. No empire can take a field of weeds away from a whole frontier. They'd have to burn every farm we've got." I let the engine run and listened to it. He was right, and the thing he was right about was larger than the engine itself. "That's the quiet revolution, Muck," I said. "Bigger than the engine almost. A fuel you grow can't be embargoed, can't be cut off. It runs out. You plant more. It's not the most powerful fuel we'll find, but it might be the most free one, and free is what this frontier's whole story is about." We let the engine run until we were satisfied it would keep running, and then we went north. The mountain pass took 4 days in cold that arrived each morning before dawn and stayed past noon. Ji Wol-yeong rode beside me for most of the second day without speaking, which was her way of waiting until she had decided what she wanted to ask. When she finally asked it, she did so without preamble. "You've got the grown fuel, the engine runs. Why drag us a week into the cold mountains chasing a miner's tail of black mud? I'm not arguing. I've learned to trust that look on you. I'm asking what's worth this much wanting." I watched the ridge ahead of us, the way the tree line thinned and gave way to bare rock, the way the stone had a particular dark staining along certain fault lines that I had been thinking about since the miner's report arrived. "Because the grown fuel runs a frontier," I said, "and if I'm right, what's under that seep runs a world." I kept my eyes on the ridge. The oilseed is freedom. This is power on a scale that changes who we are, and that's exactly why I'm uneasy. Freedom you grow in a field is a gift. Power you dig out of one hole. That's the kind of thing people line up to kill each other over. I want to know if it's there. I'm not sure yet that I want it to be. She did not answer that. Neither did I. The seep was in a shallow fold between two ridges, a place where the rock had cracked along an old fault, and something dark and slow had been working its way up through the crack for long enough that the stone around it was permanently stained. Hektazo had been here 40 years ago as a young man, following an iron vein, and had noted the black mud in his survey log as a curiosity and moved on. He stood at the edge of the pit we had opened now, watching the crude well up from below, and his face had the look of a man revising a large portion of his understanding of the hills he thought he knew. 40 years I've taken iron out of these hills and never knew this was sleeping under it," he said. The crude came up steadily, black and glossy, filling the pit faster than the 2 men with buckets could bale it. There was no sign of it slowing. It comes up on its own, filling the pit faster than we can bale. There's no end to it that I can see. He looked at me. "Is this the thing you wanted, or the thing you were afraid of? Because your face is doing both at once." I watched the crude well up from the earth, patient and indifferent, the same black flood that had been building pressure under these hills since before anyone in the Yun realm had thought to look for it. "Both Teho," I said quietly. "That's crude oil. Burns, lubricates, lights, paves, a dozen treasures in one black flood, and there's a sea of it under these hills. It's the best thing we ever found, and the most dangerous, and I don't know yet which it'll turn out to be for us." I stepped back from the edge. "Tap it, carefully. Let's find out what it's made of before we decide what it makes of us." Do-gwang had not spoken since we reached the seep. He had been walking the perimeter, measuring distances, noting where the rock was bare and where it was gravel, checking the angle of the wind. When he spoke to everyone present, and his voice had the flat, non-negotiable quality it always carried when he was not making a suggestion. "Understand me, all of you, the way you didn't before Gil." He let the name sit for a moment. "This black water is patient death, waiting for one careless flame. No fire within 50 paces, no iron-shod boots that might strike a spark on stone, sealed barrels, hauled slow. A boiler we have to push to make dangerous. This is dangerous just sitting there, the moment you forget it. We carry it like it's already on fire, because the day we stop it will be." There was no argument. There never was after Gil. His word is law on this, same as the boilers, more, I said. We found a sea of fuel, and the finding was the easy part. Living next to it without burning ourselves alive is the discipline of a generation. Pyo Eun-ha worked on the crude for 11 days in a sealed clay still she designed herself, with a long condensing tube coiled in a water bath and a series of collection vessels arranged by temperature. She kept the fire small and steady and the thermometer at eye level, and she wrote down what rose at each heat and what it looked like and what it smelled like and how it moved in the collection vessel. When she came to report, she brought 4 small flasks and set them in a row on the bench in front of me. It sorts itself by temperature, she said. Each part flies at its own heat, so we give it each heat in turn and catch what rises. She pointed to the first flask, which held something so pale it was almost colorless, volatile enough that I could smell it faintly from 2 arm lengths away. The light spirit highest and first, your engine's true food, far hotter and quicker than the grown oil. The second flask, a cleaner amber than the raw crude, familiar. Then lamp oil. The third. She paused, and something in her expression shifted toward genuine pleasure. Oh, this, the slippery one, the lubricant we have begged for to keep our bearings alive. The fourth, dark, thick, slow. Then tar for the roads. 1 mud, 4 treasures, separated by patience and a thermometer. The most generous thing I have ever boiled. Fractional distillation. She had worked it out from the thermometer and the still and the observation that different fractions rose at different temperatures, and she had named each one by what it did rather than what it was, which was in some ways the more honest naming. The light fraction runs the fast engines, I said, looking at the row of flasks. The heavy oil keeps every machine on the frontier from grinding itself to death. The lamp oil lights the towns. The tar paves the roads between them. 1 hole in the ground pays for the whole future at once. I picked up the flask with the light spirit and set it down again. That's exactly what scares me about it. Mokjae ran the light fraction in the engine that afternoon. The difference was immediate and absolute. The engine did not merely run. It ran with a ferocity that made the grown oil run seem like a memory of something quieter and more patient. No smoke, no cough, no sludge building in the passages, just the clean, rapid, total combustion of a fuel that had been waiting under a mountain for longer than the Yun realm had existed. Listen to her go. Mokjae had to raise his voice over the engine. No smoke, no cough, no sludge. She's not stewing the fuel, she's devouring it. The grown oil was a good plow horse. This is a race horse. He looked at me over the running engine. So which do we build for? The free one we grow, or the fast one we dig? Both, muck, and that's the whole strategy. I let the engine run and thought about fields of oilseed spreading across the daughter towns, and 1 black fold of rock in the cold mountains with Dogwang's safety perimeter around it. The grown oil for the everyday engines, the workhorses, the daughter towns, free, renewable, unembargoable. The dug spirit for the engines that need to be fast and far and powerful, and the lubricant and lamp oil and tar that come with it. A frontier that can both grow its fuel and dig it, answers to no one for its power. That's the wall down. 2 answers, and we keep both. That evening I stood with Ji Wol-yeong at the bench where both flasks sat side by side, the amber of the processed oilseed oil and the pale, almost luminous spirit from the first distillation cut. I had been trying to find the right way to say what I had been thinking since the crude welled up in that mountain pit, and I was not certain I had found it, but I tried. Look at them side by side, the oil seed. Anybody can grow it, a field at a time, spread it across 100 towns, and everyone owns its own power. But the oil field is one place, 1 black sea under 1 fold of rock. Whoever holds that hole holds a power nobody else has. That's a thing kings are made of, Wol-yeong, and unmade over. She was quiet for a moment, looking at the 2 flasks. When she spoke, her voice had the flatness of someone recalling something they would have preferred to forget. I have fought in 2 wars, and both were finally about who held the one well, the one pass. Concentrate a treasure in one place, and you've built a target and a tyrant's dream in the same act. She straightened. So, tokens, lean on the fuel that makes everyone strong, the grown one, and guard the oil field like the dangerous prize it is. Use the Doug spirit, but never let the frontier need it. Power you grow keeps you free. Power you hoard in one pit will eventually own you. I did not answer immediately. She had said it more cleanly than I had managed to, which was not unusual. She had 2 wars worth of education in what concentrated power does to the people who hold it and the people who want it from them. I picked up the chalk and crossed fuel off the slate on the wall. The letters had been there long enough that the chalk had dried to a pale ghost of itself, and crossing it out left a satisfying double line through the word. Fuel token solved. Twice. I set the chalk down and looked at what remained on the slate. 1 wall left, and it was the one I had been circling in my thinking for weeks without wanting to look at it directly. 1 wall left, and it's the one I've been quietly dreading. How do you light a fire 1,000 times a minute, exactly on time, with no electrics, no spark in a bottle, nothing? I looked at the engine, sitting quiet now, patient, waiting for the thing it still lacked. Every world finds a way without lightning, so will we. Tomorrow, the match that strikes itself, the last wall, little fire, then you run for real.